Commons Standing Committee on Natural Resources. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee is continuing its study of creating a fair and equitable Canadian energy transformation. Today is our fifth meeting with witnesses on this study, and I'll provide an update at the end of the meeting on what happened on Wednesday with our Indigenous panel and what we're doing to try to rectify that. So that'll be at the end of the meeting. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of November 25th, 2021. Members are attending either in person or remotely. I'd like to remind all participants that now that we've started, screenshots or taking photos is not permitted, but we are being televised and made available via the House of Commons website. As per the directive of the Board of Internal Economy, we ask anyone at the table to wear a mask if you leave the table and move around, and everyone else to wear their masks during the meeting. And a few comments for the benefits of our witnesses. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. For those participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you're not speaking. There's interpretation for those on Zoom. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either floor, so whatever language is being spoken, English or French. And when anyone is speaking, we ask you to just maintain a conversational tone. It allows our interpreters to keep up with the conversation, and that way everybody can participate, have the benefit of what you're saying. And for those in the room, you can use the earpiece and select the desired channel. All comments should be addressed through the chair. For those in the room, please raise your hand. For members joining us virtually, you can use the raise hand function, and the clerk and I will do our best to manage the speaking order as best we can. I will mention, if anyone's new to being a witness to our committee, when we get into the question and answer session, I very much turn it over to the members to guide the line of questioning for the amount of time that they have. And so even if you raise your hand, they may have somebody that they want to direct their questions to. So I leave it to the members to keep an eye on who has their hands raised and if they get to you or not. So we try to be inclusive, but it is very much up to the members to decide who they're going to be interacting with as we go through the afternoon. I would like to welcome members Desjardins, Lalonde, and Mr. Sobera, who's going to be joining us for a while on the committee now. And we're going to getting into welcoming our witnesses. So first of all, from the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, we have Shannon Joseph, Vice President, Government Relations and Indigenous Affairs. From Canadians for Affordable Energy, we have the Honourable Dan McTeague, President. Clean Energy Canada, Marin Smith, Chief Innovation Officer. And then from Electricity Canada, we have Francis Bradley, President and Chief Executive Officer, appearing jointly with Electricity Human Resources Canada with Michelle Brannigan, Chief Executive Officer. Energy Newfoundland, Charlene Johnson, Chief Executive Officer, and appearing in person, Iron and Earth, Louisa De Silva, Executive Director. So welcome to all of our witnesses. Thank you so much for making yourselves available to be with us today on this study of creating a fair and equitable Canadian energy transformation. I'm going to now go to opening comments. Each of the panelists will have 5 minutes. Mr. Angus.
Yes, at the last meeting I'd asked if we had confirmation if the CLC, the Canadian Labour Congress, was going to be giving testimony, and I'd asked if we could get a list of witnesses who have been confirmed. Can you confirm if they are invited?
They are invited, and I can provide an update at probably on Wednesday. We have a meeting with our clerk and our analysts at the end of this meeting to go through the next pieces, and that's where we'll be trying to see how we can also fit in the Indigenous panel that got bumped because of votes on Wednesday. So I will aim to have an update to everyone by Wednesday for where the witness panels going forward will be. For the witnesses, I use a handy file card system. When you see the yellow flag, that means there's 30 seconds left in your time. And when you get the red card, wind up your thoughts. Don't stop mid-sentence, but just sort of conclude your thought, and then we can move on to the next person. And so with that, I have lost my timer clock for today, so I'm going to be using my phone, and it should be going off at the end of the note. I'll try to silence it, but you'll get a verbal or audio cue as well when the time is up. So with that, and now I've just set it to 20 minutes. I'll go back to 5 minutes. We will start with Ms. Joseph, and the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. So thank you very much, committee members, for the opportunity to present today. The upstream oil and gas industry is committed to environmental leadership. We see an important role for our industry in meeting increasing global demand for reliable, affordable, and responsibly produced energy, while we proactively advance solutions to support Canada's role in addressing climate change. Growing Canadian oil and natural gas exports and market share is an important solution to the twin challenges of reducing emissions and enhancing global energy security. Canada's upstream oil and natural gas industry, our workers and innovators want to work with the Government of Canada to fulfill this potential. Our industry directly and indirectly employs more than 500,000 talented Canadians in every province. Through their hard work and innovation, Canada produces oil and natural gas, which according to recent Bank of Montreal capital markets reports, has the top ranked environmental, social, and governance or ESG profiles among the world's top 10 energy exporters. In addition, our Indigenous partners have an important and growing role in the responsible energy development that we have in Canada, and this also provides Indigenous communities with opportunities for sustainable prosperity and self-determination. A healthy and innovative oil and natural gas sector is part of reconciliation and plays an important role in economic reconciliation. Our industry will also continue to work on the technological innovation to support domestic and international emissions reductions, as well as other goals. It is therefore vital that the scope, scale, and pace of Canada's approach to just transition aligns with global energy transformations so that Canada is not inadvertently phasing out opportunities, both domestically and internationally, to play a role in global energy security and emissions reduction. According to the International Energy Agency, the global need and demand for oil and natural gas will continue for decades to come. And that is true even in their sustainability scenario and their net zero scenario. And as the global population increases and people all over the world to seek to improve their quality of life, safe, reliable, and affordable energy is fundamental to such improvements. Thus, one of the most important roles Canada can play in addressing global climate change is displacing coal in the global energy mix with Canadian natural gas exported as liquefied natural gas or LNG. An effective approach to managing the impacts from the transformation to a lower carbon global economy should reflect Canada's unique opportunity to meet future and current increases in global demand for responsibly produced oil and natural gas. And this approach should protect and enhance Canadian and global energy security and manage energy affordability impacts. We therefore suggest that Canada's just transition approach incorporate the following three principles: support the important role for Canada as a responsible low emission producer, able to meet increasing demands for natural gas and oil and playing a key role in global energy security. Recognize and support a world-class and skilled workers who will continue to be needed in their roles, even as their capacities expand to additional functions such as hydrogen production, carbon capture, utilization, and storage to meet our complementary goal of significant emission reductions in Canada. Affirm that the focus of Canada's climate strategy is reducing greenhouse gas emissions and that all sectors have a role to play consistent with this effort. There are important lessons from energy policies made in other jurisdictions that we should learn from. The current European situation highlights the risk of a disorderly energy transition. Even before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, oil and natural gas prices had been rising as a result of supply shortages and a decline in energy development. An important driver for this decline has been policy signals from governments and the investment community that are misaligned with global energy demand. Canada's just transition policy should be informed by this reality and these realities. It should include performance metrics, looking at economic performance, job performance, regionally, nationally. It should be informed by regional differences across Canada. It should strive to improve the economics for Canadian industries and advance emissions reduction work. It should ensure that the scope, scale, and pace of Canada's transition to a lower carbon economy aligns with global energy transformations. A collaborative approach is necessary to guide a successful outcome on all of these issues, and CAPP stands ready as a solutions-oriented partner at a pivotal time to work with the Parliament and the government in creating a fair and equitable energy transformation. Thank you.
Perfect timing. Thank you so much. Okay, there we go. That's right. Okay. Excellent. So now we're going to go to Mr. McTague, and I will start the timer for you for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chair, it's a pleasure to be here. Je suis honoré d'être ici.
I'm honored to be here today to be the guest of members of this committee. Now, the context or backdrop for my appearance today requires a couple of remarks regarding the just transition across Canada.
Very timely that this committee should be looking at an issue that I think has to be contrasted against the reality that many Canadians are confronting today. It's pretty clear, I think, for those of us who have been in the business of looking at energy pricing, that what's often lost in all of this discussion, as important as it may be, in the context that we find ourselves, is that we're probably not spending a lot of time looking at important issues that confront Canadians, mostly the issue of affordability, and that deals directly with the issue of energy affordability. It may not come as a surprise to many of my colleagues here, former colleagues as well, and I'm good to see some of them still on committee, and some who I have a very close relationship with, that we find ourselves in an odd situation in which we want to do what's right by the just transition, but we have to recognize that Canadians are having a very difficult time making that transition at a time of record-setting prices. And here I'm not referring simply to gas prices, although that would be the easier part. Diesel prices, natural gas prices, the cost of electricity in many provinces across this country have reached enormously difficult levels for most consumers. And it's in that context that I believe that this committee must find all of its conclusions and all of its recommendations. I think we've been given an opportunity to be perhaps told by these signals that it is time for Canadians and our representatives to take into consideration the impact too quick a transition may have. And although we want to do right by the environment, we also have to do right by consumers. We have to do right by what is affordable for the country. Relying on energies that have been proven in Europe and other places as not being scalable, reliable, and at the end of the day, affordable, also leads to unintended consequences. Consequences that we see being played out in Europe today, where they've had 30 years of going down this road of finding an equitable solution. We are an energy intense country. We are a coal nation. We are a nation that relies more disproportionately on energy. And so being a former member of parliament and riding that once led technology when it came to energy, such as the first commercial nuclear reactors in North America, not only brought about the implementation of new technologies that were real and achievable, they also managed to bring about unprecedented period of prosperity for my province of Ontario. Cheap electricity, cheap energy allowed, notwithstanding the public's contribution, Ontario's jurisdiction to attract manufacturing and to continue its strength relative to many other North American jurisdictions. Going too quickly in the idea that we can somehow convert and change overnight because it is de rigueur, because it is fashionable, may not have the outcome that we want. In fact, the desirable outcome that we're seeing is governments increasingly having to, in my province, not only adopt green energy, but also at a time in which it's having to accept as much as $6.5 billion in debt to shield consumers from the full effect of moving too quickly on certain technologies that are both unproven, unreliable, and as I mentioned earlier, affordable. Alors, j'attends vos questions.
So I look forward to answering your questions.
You have to say, and perhaps through this dialectic, this exchange, we can learn a little bit more about each other, your interests. But at the end of the day, someone has to speak up for the Canadians who are right on this very day questioning whether or not affordability can be managed in this country. And anything that deviates from that, I suggest, might not meet with the public's test of support. Merci, Monsieur le Président. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Thank you for your opening comments. And now I'm going to reset here. We'll jump now to Clean Energy Canada. And I'm just trying to see where on my screen I have Ms. Smith. So over to you. Okay, perfect. Thank you. You have 5 minutes.
Merci beaucoup. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. So 5 years ago, the number one message I had in a meeting with many of you elected officials was that climate action wasn't about pain, it was about gain, that the energy transition was about jobs and the economy. And what was an idea then is clearly a reality now. So over 430,000 Canadians are already employed in the clean energy sector, a number set to grow by almost 50% by 2020. Modeling that we did with Navius Research estimates that while 126,000 jobs will be lost in fossil fuels by 2030, as global markets transition away from oil and gas, that 209,000 jobs will be created in clean energy. So we also found that the biggest relative clean energy job growth would happen in Alberta. The province has the best wind and solar resources in the country. Consider the Traverse Solar Facility in southern Alberta. It's Canada's largest solar panel project, creating over 1,000 jobs during peak construction. In Edmonton, we see Air Products Canada right now, a blue hydrogen project with $1.3 billion of investment, creating 2,500 jobs in construction and engineering jobs in the near term, with more job creation to come in the hydrogen transportation industry over the long term. And it isn't just the energy sector this transition's about. We're seeing automakers rebrand themselves. I don't know if you noticed that electric vehicles dominated the Super Bowl ad. So that's a sign of the change that's happening. And in March, we landed the single largest investment in automaking in Canada since the 80s, if not ever, a $5 billion gigafactory in Windsor that's supporting 2,500 new jobs. This is an opportunity to save our auto sector and to grow it in new ways. And this is but one of the many recent commitments in Canada's battery supply chain. Almost overnight, Canada has set itself up to play an integral role in electrifying the North American auto industry. And the hard work and coordination of a federal and provincial governments were really key to landing these big deals. This summer, Clean Energy Canada and the Trillium Network are going to be releasing new research that quantifies the size of Canada's battery supply chain opportunity for jobs. I don't have the data to share the report fully with you today, but I'll offer a brief spoiler. These jobs are going to exist across Canada in rural and suburban regions alike, as well as across industries, mining, manufacturing, and components. And a well-designed clean industrial strategy is going to be what's needed to land these types of jobs and more investment potentially across the country. So we can see the job creation starting in this energy transition in Canada. I have another important message, and it really builds on what Dan was saying, and that it's just as critical as the economic one, and that is about the most salient issue in Canada right now, which is the cost of living. One thing is that clean energy transition is a solution to this problem as well. In the plainest sense, transitioning to clean energy lowers energy bills. And this is coming from the International Energy Agency, which has shown that with current government policies, average household energy bills will decline in advanced economies between now and 2050. And where governments introduce more policy, it declines even further. The Climate Institute in Canada found the same thing. Again, Canadians will spend a smaller share of their incomes on energy as we move. So yes, electricity bills will be higher. We'll use more electricity, but getting off of fossil fuels combined with energy efficiency is ultimately a recipe for savings. I don't know if any of you saw a recent report called The True Cost. It showed that over 8 years, electric vehicles were thousands of dollars cheaper overall than comparable gas models. So just simply, again, when you waste less energy and when you use less wasteful energy, you save money. And that's because a lot of energy is lost in heat for the fossil fuels. So there's one hurdle we must address, however, and that's something that saves you money in the long run, often comes with a higher price tag today. So this is an area where government needs to help. Lower income Canadians need measures made for them, rebates for used EVs, for example. I just want to end by saying the global energy transition is well underway. Our largest trading partners are investing billions in these newly imagined economies. The EU's race to reduce its dependence on imported fossil fuels foreshadows where the global economy is going. And one of the most effective things that Canada can do to create a fair and equitable transition is to invest in that energy transition, invest with good policy and regulations to hasten decarbonization, with tax credits and strategic investments, and with a clear signal of policy certainty so that the private sector can align their investments with this clean energy future. Merci beaucoup.
Great. Thank you for those opening comments.
Tell Justin you're too busy to take his call.
Yeah, that's right. I'd like to go next to Electricity Canada and Electricity Human Resources Canada, who I understand are going to be splitting the 5-minute opening statement. So thank you. It is going to give me some challenges for timekeeping. So, Mr. Bradley, I'll give you the mark at 2 minutes and then the red card at 2.5, and we'll just transition over to Ms. Brannigan at that point. I'll give you the yellow at 4.5 minutes and the red card at 5. So hopefully that'll work for you. And if you're ready to go, Mr. Bradley, I'll start the clock.
Ben oui, merci.
Well, yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson, and good afternoon to the members of the committee. My name is Francis Bradley, and I'm the President and CEO of Electricity Canada. You've noticed I'll be sharing my time today with my colleague from Human Resources, Electrical Industry Canada, Michelle Brannigan. Electricity Canada is the national voice of electricity in Canada. Our members generate, transmit and distribute electricity to industrial, commercial and residential customers from coast to coast to coast.
Canada's energy future and a key economic, environmental and social enabler, essential to Canadian prosperity. The sector employs over 100,000 people and contributes over $30 billion to Canada's GDP. It's also among the cleanest in the world, with more than 80% of Canadian electricity already being produced from non-emitting sources. The electricity sector is at the forefront of the energy transition. As a sector, we'll need to decarbonize and phase out our remaining high-emitting electricity generation. This means parts of our workforce will need to transition. Ensuring an appropriate level of support to affected workers and communities is essential in ensuring the transition is a just transition. Electricity is also a high-growth sector. As Canada works towards its climate goals, electricity will enable other parts of the economy to decarbonize through electrification. This means tremendous changes to Canada's labour market. While this will create more jobs, it's vital that we ensure the development of new skill sets within the workforce to match them. Ensuring that we attract and expand the opportunities for underrepresented groups within our sector's workforce is also a priority. And finally, as our sector decarbonizes, we must ensure that electricity remains affordable. The federal government estimates that we'll need to double or triple the amount of clean electricity Canada produces by 2050. Our sector is also looking at how we're going to meet the government's ambition to build a net zero electricity grid by 2035. Today, May 9th, 2022, marks only 4,985 days until we need to accomplish that objective. Meeting those goals will require substantial investments in electricity infrastructure and careful planning. We must work together and take the necessary time to ensure that the energy transition does not result in significant negative impacts on affordability for Canadians. Notre secteur sera au centre de la transition.
Our sector will be at the centre of the just transition, and we appreciate the opportunity to participate in this important study. I'd now like to hand the floor over to Michelle.
Thank you, Francis, and thank you, committee members, for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Michelle Brannigan, CEO of EHRC, Electricity Human Resources Canada. Our role at EHRC is to keep the lights on by preparing and empowering a world-class workforce for the entire electricity industry. As a national non-profit, we are an unbiased convener of stakeholders that work together to ensure that we have a workforce that is safety focused, highly skilled, diverse and productive. And we conduct the labour market research to understand what the supply and demand labour needs for the sector are, and then translate that into actionable programs to fill identified labour market gaps. Now, electricity and Canada depends on its essential workers 24/7. But this is not a just-in-time industry. Over 80% of our workers work in highly technical jobs, such as the trades and engineering, and it can take 5 to 10 years to reach full competency in a role, especially nuclear. So we need to be able to plan well in advance for labour market needs. And that's going to take coordination from employers, from labour, from policymakers and educators to make sure that the electricity system can support new demand loads driven by increased electrification. And of course, innovation in our technology and our business processes, such as SMRs and energy storage. As we transition away from fossil fuels to increased renewables and electrification, there is a need to make sure that no one is left behind. There will be workers who will need to upskill or reskill as jobs sunset or evolve, and we need to ensure that those workers are given the opportunity and the support they need to do so. And in addition, any transition to clean energy must be built upon inclusive policies. We have an ethical obligation to ensure that anybody in our society feels capable of pursuing a career regardless of their gender, their background, or any other parts of their identity. So to end, the sector has the potential to be a key enabler of the just transition, and we appreciate the opportunity to be engaged in this discussion today. So thank you for your time.
Great, and thank you for your opening comments. Now from Energy Newfoundland, we'll go to Ms. Johnson, and if you're ready, I'll start the clock for your 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the committee for allowing me to appear today. To begin my comments, I will provide brief details about Energy NL. We are an industry association representing approximately 460 companies and organizations involved in the energy sector. Our association has been involved in advocating for our members for 45 years now, and we just recently revised our vision, our mandate, and our name to more accurately reflect the interests of our members and the evolving energy industry. There is an evolution occurring as we prepare to evolve our energy sources. Now more than ever, this energy evolution is being driven by our understanding of energy, technological advancements, as well as our skills and expertise. And while oil and gas will continue to be a part of the energy mix for decades, we must find ways to ensure emissions are minimized, and the industry is a leader in our collective efforts towards net zero. That is where the product of offshore Newfoundland and Labrador is most important. Our oil is 30% below the global average for emissions at extraction. So as we work diligently toward net zero, this product should play a leading role. As we discuss the objective of the federal government to provide a just transition for workers, we must keep in mind the lower emission properties of our offshore, and we must keep in mind the regional differences of our nation and our energy sources. They are not all one and the same. We must recognize that a just transition for workers may look differently in Eastern Canada than it does in Central Canada, than it does in Western Canada, than it does in Northern Canada. As outlined in the Energy NL written submission on the Just Transition for Workers discussion paper, our offshore industry employs a highly educated workforce with specialized expertise. When you consider the 2021 direct employment for just one of Newfoundland and Labrador's producing offshore projects, Hebron, at least 82% of the direct full-time equivalent positions can be considered to be skilled labor. These are highly specialized, highly paid, and highly motivated individuals. Messaging from governments around transition is important, as messaging which implies an immediate shift has the potential to create uncertainty, deter much needed investment in the short to medium term, disrupt livelihoods, and impact on the mental health of workers and business owners. Recognition also needs to occur that opportunities for renewable energy development may not provide the same level of employment or incomes as the oil and gas industry, and may not occur in the same geographic areas. Thus, the economic benefits to people and communities may not be the same. In that context, for the advisory board proposed in the Just Transition discussion paper, governments, regulators, and all industry stakeholders, including the private sector, industry associations, labor groups, education, training, and research institutions, and organizations that represent diversity in the workforce should have a role, a voice at the table. Each province should have its own advisory board. A just transition will require planning and extensive consultation with industry. Technology development and adaptation will also be needed for Canada to reach net zero, and this will certainly require government program support. Coinciding with this, training of workers to enhance their capabilities to work in the digital workplace will also help to lower emissions and ease any potential transition. There's also a responsibility for governments and businesses to ensure all Canadian industries are preparing for net zero and finding solutions to lower their carbon outputs. This is a cross-sector issue, one we must collectively combat. I must also say that Energy NL has confidence in the Federal Minister of Labour, our own Minister Seamus O'Regan, who is keenly aware of the issues facing workers in the natural resource sector. So to conclude my comments, I will highlight the recommendations of Energy NL. Differences in regions, including various energy products produced, as well as locations of workers, must be recognized. A one-size-fits-all approach will not suffice. Energy NL recommends that each province have an advisory board composed of government, industry, labor, and other invested stakeholders. As part of this, a labor market assessment of each province should occur, with consideration given to impacts on communities. We recommend the Government of Canada financially support the research, development, demonstration, implementation, and adaptation of technology to help our sectors achieve net zero, as well as supporting the training of workers to enhance their capabilities to work in the digital workspace. Governments must be mindful of the impact their statements about transitions have on workers, communities, and companies. All industries, not just the oil and gas industry, must do their part to help us achieve net zero and provide a just transition for workers. Energy NL also recommends that the approach of the Government of Canada be wholesome, including departments and agencies beyond Natural Resources Canada. Again, thank you for your time, and I look forward to discussing this matter further.
Perfect, thank you. And now we'll go to within the room here. Ms. Silva, welcome, and I'll start the clock for your 5-minute opening statement.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, committee members. I'd like to start off by acknowledging that I work, live, and play on the traditional and treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Communities across Canada face increasingly critical times, leaving the most vulnerable even more precariously situated. Canada's economy faces 3 challenges: recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic, decarbonizing our economy, and addressing inequality to ensure a prosperous transition for all. At Iron and Earth, we are fossil fuel workers and friends and family of those in the energy industry. Fossil fuel workers bring a wealth of technical experience that must be harnessed to create a fair and equitable energy transition. But workers face challenges to this energy transition. With a lack of access to opportunities, many workers are worried that if they don't receive training and/or career support, they will be left behind in this transition, even with a deep desire to participate in the net zero economy. Canada needs to invest in upgrading our workforce, businesses, infrastructure, and revitalizing our environment. In response to the just transition, Iron and Earth created the 4-point Prosperous Transition Plan, with emphasis on Indigenous peoples, fossil fuel industry workers, and energy communities at the forefront of the conversation. The 4 points are, first, upskilling initiatives that include hands-on, real-life work experience and prioritizing access for Indigenous workers and workers who currently face barriers to participating in the industry. Second, repositioning initiatives to support businesses to retool manufacturing capacities and pivot services to meet emerging demand in net zero industries. The third is to retrofit and repurpose initiatives to reduce the carbon intensity of long-term infrastructure and repurpose old infrastructure. And lastly, Indigenous-led climate solutions that address climate mitigation, adaptation, and restoration. Iron and Earth has also developed a Just Transition Implementation Program, where we listen to fossil fuel industry workers and their communities, as well as Indigenous peoples from different communities and nations. The program meets people where they are at and centers the most vulnerable and those who tend to be left out of the main narratives at the forefront, those racialized, gendered, housing insecure, and underemployed, among others. We include voices that are critical to the transition, as well as those who are against any new developments in their communities. The goal is to go beyond consultations and to truly listen to communities and workers by creating ongoing conversations. This program should be used as a model for the Just Transition implementation in every energy community across Canada, to show workers and their community what a just transition will mean for them, focusing on the local economy and job opportunities and available resources such as upskilling programs and the Climate Career Portal. There is also a need for consistent messaging from the government. It is confusing to hear that the Bay du Nord, a major offshore fossil fuel project, was approved shortly after a very green forward budget was announced, while intergovernmental agencies such as the IPCC are calling for an end to all new fossil fuel projects. It makes it difficult for workers and their families and communities to know who and what to listen to. Begin a fair and equitable energy transition, a just transition, by having clear and consistent messaging across all sectors of the government. which leads me to my next point. There must be coordination between all levels of government, from municipal, provincial, to the federal level. We already face barriers to clean energy project developments because of differing laws at each government level. Currently, there are several ministries at the federal level that play a part in the just transition, but no central ministry, group, or committee that oversees the development, management, and implementation of just transition policy in Canada. It is essential that this group not be an advisory board because advice can be ignored, but rather this group needs to have the authority to ensure workers' needs are centered and shape the legislation. To summarize, to create a fair and equitable energy transition, start with communities, involve everyone, listen, dedicate funding and resources towards a national upskilling initiative, create career opportunities through repositioning businesses, retrofitting and repurposing infrastructure, and Indigenous-led climate solutions. Create a central government authority on the just transition legislation creation, management, and implementation, and above all, be clear and consistent with all messaging. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Let's stop that. We now have 4 sets of questions at 6 minutes each, and our first up is going to be Mr. McLean. So with that, over to you, Mr. McLean, to get us started.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses today because it was all very informative. It's a good list of, I think, very informed witnesses we have, and anxious to get to the questions. I'm going to ask, first of all, my questions of Ms. Joseph. Ms. Joseph, I'm going to be a little technical here, but it's about employment we're talking about here. Can you tell me how many people work in the Canadian oil and gas industry?
So directly and indirectly, and that includes our national supply chain, we're looking at over 522,000 people.
So that 522,000 would include the oil and gas producers, the oil and gas service industry, as well as the suppliers in other parts of the country that are providing hardware such as steel for your inputs and technical staff as well, like software and everything else?
Software consultants, environmental consultants.
So 522,000 employees are part of your industry. Thank you. Do you know how many direct employees at the Natural Resources Canada are employed, either exclusively or mostly, that deal with the oil and gas industry in Canada?
I could provide that number to the committee. I don't have that number offhand.
Okay, thank you. And as far as public officials go across Canada, do you know how many are employed at all the provincial governments that are also dealing with your industry on almost a daily basis?
No, I don't have that number, but I could find it.
No worries at all. So it's safe to say we'd be adding tens of thousands of more jobs to that 522,000 that we talk about there?
Correct.
And we should consider them all in one pool when we talk about any sort of transition of their jobs, the public officials as well as the service officials, as well as the steel making, the high tech, and the oil and gas producers and service companies all in one pool, would you say?
That sounds reasonable.
I think so too. Thank you. How much does your industry contribute on average to Canadian governments at all levels per year? Do you know?
So that number is continually evolving, but our latest estimates are looking like $20 billion as the average to all orders of government in Canada. And I'd reference as well Budget 2022 that had 45% higher corporate tax revenues as a result of higher commodity prices. And a big part of that is the export of oil and gas from Canada.
So any narrative around your industry being a subsidized industry by the Canadian government would be probably very uninformed, would you say?
It would be highly uninformed, and I'd be happy to share with the committee our recent submission on subsidies. This has been studied extensively by ECCC and by finance, and we are not a subsidized industry. We are a significant contributor to Canada's economy.
Thank you very much. When we talk about the evolution of energy supply and demand, and you mentioned hydrogen, but there's also carbon capture, utilization, and storage, all of which are about decarbonizing our energy supply chain. Where do you think those jobs are going to come from? Because they're going to be highly technical. They're going to be people that are trained in the sciences, but also have some technical training in the field. where do you think those jobs will most likely come from?
Well, our industry has made significant commitments around emissions reductions. Our oil sands producers have committed to be net zero. Carbon capture and sequestration are an important part of that. And the kind of economies of scales and volumes and concentrations we're talking about mean that our industry is going to be an important starting point for carbon capture and sequestration in Canada.
Thank you. Can you tell me, because you touched on it in your comments, how many jobs are associated with your members' building of LNG Canada, the largest project that's ever been built in Canada? Can you tell me how many people are employed in that build, please?
Many thousands, both in terms of the facility itself, but also the Coastal GasLink pipeline, which is still being constructed and is going to supply that facility with energy. And given global demand, there's a lot of interest of seeing how to maybe expand that project.
That's interesting. And can you also tell me how many or what percentage of those workers on those two combined projects are Indigenous workers? Is that available?
So Indigenous peoples represent, I think, around 6%. We are double any other sector in Canada's economy, or the average kind of Canadian sector. We could look for more specific details. Those projects also have benefit agreements that include employment, training, and things like that. So there's going to be a higher percentage of Indigenous people participating. And I would point out there is significant participation of nations such as the Haisla and other coastal nations in LNG Canada. And of course, very recently, 20 First Nations secured an equity stake of 10% in the Coastal GasLink pipeline. And so many nations are finding a path to prosperity, but also to contribute to global emissions.
Thank you very much. I'm just short of time here. I apologize. Just as a comparison, how many jobs were involved in building the 12 facilities in the United States for LNG export that are either built or in the process of being built right now? Do you know how much employment was involved in those builds?
Very significant employment, and I can find the numbers. And of course, there's growth there now because of global demand.
Yeah, and would there be similar numbers employed in Australia as they've continued to ramp up LNG export for the world's needs as well?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Chair, do I have any time?
There are 2 seconds.
I got 2 seconds. Thank you very much. I'll come back.
Great. Thank you. So I get this sorted out. Perfect. Now we're going to go to Ms. DeBrusen for her 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question was for Clean Energy Canada. And at one point you were talking about job creation and jobs in the future economy. And I was wondering if you could give me at a high level, what types of future jobs do you see what industries do you see as big employment opportunities as we go forward in our economy, in a low carbon economy?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. So there will be jobs in energy production. So whether that's clean hydrogen or electricity transmission, et cetera. So these are highly skilled jobs, good paying jobs, as well as in transportation. As you know, when I brought up the whole piece about transitioning to the electric vehicles, the auto sector, and we're already seeing a huge number of jobs there forecast to be growing. A couple of the others are in buildings, in terms of retrofits, in terms of installation of HVAC systems. There's actually the potential for enormous numbers of jobs, electricians and construction workers, et cetera, as we retrofit and renovate our building stock to be more efficient and transition it onto cleaner sources of energy, such as electric heat pumps and cooling systems. And then there's a couple of other areas of jobs growth, as I mentioned, around batteries. I'm not able to provide you exact numbers there, but from the mining sector, the critical metals and minerals up to refining, which Canada could do more refining in order to feed into the cathode development, anode development, cell development, and the building out of the whole battery supply, linking in with the auto sector. And that's where we've seen some really, in the last 6 months, Canada has actually really started to land some of those big projects and the jobs that go with it. So like the fossil fuel sector or any sector, when you're building clean energy projects, they create thousands of jobs in the construction phase, and then they continue on with ongoing jobs. So all the skills and trades that are needed in the fossil fuel sector, there's been a report out of Iron and Earth in the US, and I'm really keen that Iron and Earth in Canada would do one as well, that shows that there's about a 90% skill transition between our existing energy workers and the clean energy workers of the future. But I do support exactly what was said around upskilling and helping position people for those jobs.
Sure, if I may, just because you've mentioned Ms. De Silva's group, at least in the US version, do you have any of that data about 90% transition of the energy workforce? Or do you know the study that she's referring to?
I'm a bit confused because Iron and Earth is only in Canada.
Okay, well, I'm able to provide it for you. It's a American group similar to Iron and Earth. So I'm able to provide the study for you.
Great. I would appreciate that study if you could get that to us. If I could go to Electricity Canada, because you mentioned also a lot about the number of people employed in electricity, the changing way that we develop our electricity. And I was wondering, what are the job opportunities in electricity going forward? What are the types of jobs that you see being developed that we will need more people to take in electricity?
Thank you for the question. Maybe I'll start, and Michelle can chime in as well, because Michelle's got a lot of the very specific information in this space. But as we look to the world 2050, the objective that we have to be net zero by 2050, we do know that we're going to have to take an all of the above approach to the electricity system overall. To double or triple the amount of clean electricity that we produce means that every non-emitting source of generation is going to have to be pursued. We're going to have to be pursuing a significant expansion of our transmission, distribution, distributed energy resources. And with the expansion of really all of the areas of clean electricity, the opportunities are immense. And Michelle could talk about some of the specifics on what those opportunities are going to look like from a workforce standpoint.
That's what I'm curious about. What are the jobs we're looking at?
Yeah, I would. Similar to Marin's comments, when you look at the growth of a number of EVs on our roads, that's going to necessitate more EV installers, for example. It's also going to necessitate people working in sales and marketing to communicate the value of electrical vehicles to the consumer, to ensure that the consumer is ready to adapt. So that's something that's important in that arena. And again, when you move to buildings and look at energy efficiency refits, et cetera, there's going to be new jobs created all along the supply chain. So if you look backwards at how our generation has evolved to include wind and solar, our workforce now includes wind and solar technicians in a way that it didn't just a decade ago. Research and development jobs are going to be important, particularly when you look at energy storage and energy storage that's going to be required to handle the Canadian climate as well too. And then we look at SMRs. And what is our skills and competencies that are going to be required to manage the large-scale adoption. And that, of course, we are now going to see our first SMR deployments in 2027 and 2028 in Ontario and Saskatchewan. So all of these jobs are going to require pretty unique skills and competencies to ensure that we have the workforce that we need. And just to give an example of, we've actually just developed about a month ago.
I'll just ask you, wrap it up quickly and with the example, and then we'll move on to our next one. Thank you.
Yeah, we developed a brand new occupational standard for the role of electrical vehicle installer because it just did not exist in the industry. And we're now hearing from our employers that want us to develop job descriptions and occupational standards for new jobs that do not yet currently exist. It's very fast moving.
Great, thank you so much. Now, Monsieur Simard, vous avez 6 minutes.
You have 6 minutes, sir. Thank you very much, John. Ms. Joseph, I'm glad that you're here with us today because you may be able to answer one of my pressing questions, one that I've asked on a number of occasions, which has remained unfortunately unanswered. So I'd call on you to make an effort that a politician could never make, and that is to answer by yay or nay, yes or no. Is net zero oil profitable, yes or no?
Demand?
As long as there's demand, yes. Well, let me explain what I mean by profitable. Something that's profitable presupposes that that consumer product doesn't need support from the state. So if you look at it from that perspective, does net zero oil without government support, is it profitable? Currently, there is rising global demand for oil, but also a move towards net zero. Our members are trying hard to achieve this. They're not going to invest in something where they're going to lose money. Question. Well, if I understand you correctly, without the support of governments, net zero oil just doesn't exist. That's the answer I'm looking for to my question. Currently, in order to reach reduction levels, there needs to be government assistance because it goes beyond the competition that's experienced on the world stage. I'm sorry to cut you off, but just a short time ago, I checked on this. I know that the price of oil dropped during the pandemic. But if you look at 2021, $64 a barrel, then 22nd of March, it almost doubled in the following year. If I look at the margins for refining, March to March 2021 to 2021, $1.15 versus refining margins of $4.40. So I think that oil companies are raking it in currently, aren't they? You'd agree with that? And just let me go further with my example. 3 days ago, I heard Jason Kenney speak. He's obviously not a Greenpeace supporter. I don't think so. I don't want to insult him. But he said that oil producers are pushing the envelope a bit too far by requesting 75% in tax credits for the initial startup costs of carbon capture and storage. Do you think that's too much? Well, if you compare with Norway and the United States and the producers there who have major projects underway to produce net zero oil, the amounts are similar. Norway, instead of providing a tax credit, is providing a grant, which is equivalent to 75%. Well, Ms. Joseph, if we just look at the averages, if I tell one of my constituents in Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean that oil companies aren't happy with 50% tax credits, that they want 75% tax credits, and when you look at the profits, EMG Energy, for example, that saw an increase of 68% in its profits over the course of the last year, Senor, an increase of $1.1 billion for this fiscal year. Canadian Natural Resources that almost doubled their profits, $3.1 billion that they've raked in, and yet they're calling on the federal government to pay for the development of carbon capture and storage technologies and strategies. In this expression, just transition, there's the word just. And I would posit the theory that this is deeply unfair to other sectors. Would you share my position on that particular matter? Response. Well, as long as there is global demand for energy, for oil, for natural gas, and Canada wants to provide it, well, we need to move towards net zero, obviously, but I understand, Ms. Joseph, the principle of demand. But, you know, there is an economics principle that presupposes that a product that one sells be profitable. Now, when I look at the profitability margins of net zero oil, well, it just doesn't cut it. If net zero oil is profitable, it's only because the state supports it in a way that it has never done with other economic sectors. In a far-fetched way. It's crazy, this idea of seeking to create net zero oil. There's a whole principle of polluter pays, and here we have the principle of the polluter rakes it in. Mr. Simard, all sectors in Canada will need assistance in order to achieve high rates, high major cuts in their emissions. But you have the lion's share. You enjoy the lion's share. IronKey International has stated that the only grants that are sure are from IDC, and they're telling us that it's one for every $14 billion. You receive $1 billion for every $14 billion, while other clean energy sectors are only receiving $1 billion. Do you think that that's fair? Response. Well, first, I don't think that the premise is accurate. I don't think those figures are correct. I can send you a submission on that particular matter.
We're out of time on that round, and now we'll go to Mr. Angus for his 6-minute round.
Thank you. I'm going to defer to my colleague, Mr. Desjardins.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thanks to all the witnesses who've joined us today. I really enjoyed what you've had to say, but I have some deeply concerning questions, and I want to preface my questions with my experience, and I really want to thank my colleague, the previous speaker, to really outline the seriousness of the issues present to Canada, particularly our economy, as we contemplate massive amounts of money to be bailed out to these companies, particular companies Ms. Joseph represents, that I've had experience with. I used to work for many of those companies, actually. I come from the Coal Lake oil sands. I worked in the oil sands, and I want to talk to you a little bit about the companies that are asking for partnership with Canada and how they've treated my community. I'm originally from the Fishing Lake Métis settlement, an Indigenous community that has currently to date still asking those oil companies to pay their taxes, just like many rural municipalities in Alberta right now. The number from the president of the Rural Municipalities Association of Alberta said $253 million in unpaid taxes to rural communities in Alberta. These are communities that are predominantly Indigenous, and they need that money. They need to be able to pay for roads, for services, for basic things. But these companies are putting that debt, that unpaid tax burden on regular, everyday people. It's killing communities. But I want to go further. These projects don't only kill communities. They affect families, and I want to thank the member from Iron and Earth talking about families and workers. My father, including myself, were energy workers. My father died on an energy site. And you know what CNRL said? Take a hike. That's workers today. And they're asking for a partnership with the government? Since when do we partner with criminals? It's absolutely unfair to the men and the women who work in these communities and their families to be shackled to companies that don't want to pay their fair share, pay for their communities, pay for the basic programs and benefits that every worker deserves. And that's partly why I'm here today, to talk about that. This is a study on fairness, on equality. And we've only talked about handing out money here. What about the families that need that money? Ms. Hogan, these companies, or sorry, Ms. Hogan, not Ms. Joseph, these companies have made billions. The previous speaker mentioned $3.3 billion. And still, you want money that these companies aren't even paying their taxes with. They're paying shareholders with that money. These are not good partnerships. And when it comes to making sure that these communities have what it needs, to Ms. Joseph, will you communicate to those members of your association to pay their fair share in Alberta, because people aren't getting ahead? Are they going to pay their taxes?
Our members pay taxes, and there have been issues.
That's not correct. They don't pay their taxes. I want to correct the record there. They are not paying their taxes. Even the minister, a conservative minister from the province of Alberta, said They are doing everything they can in the last 3 years to get these companies to pay the $253 million that have gone up in the last 3 years. $253 million to little tiny communities. All I want you to say is yes, these communities are going to pay their fair share. Are they going to pay their fair share?
I know that the provinces, companies, and municipalities are in discussion about what is a fair share, what is the correct
Is that no?
And
What about the
discussions are ongoing.
$253 million? There's a number, $253 million worth of unpaid surface tax. They need to pay it. Are they going to pay it?
I can't comment further than what I've already said.
This is the kind of partnership that our Canadian, we're expecting to gamble Canadians' future with that answer? When rural municipalities can't even pay for water, roads, for their communities in our province of Alberta. I worked and people died here in these sites, and they're asking for partnership when they can't even pay the measly $253 million that the companies. This is my time. Sorry, Ms. Joseph.
Sorry.
These companies need to demonstrate that they're good fiscal partners. These communities are suffering from massive infrastructure deficits. I was the national director for the Métis settlements in northern Alberta when a wildfire went through, Chuck Egg Fire. Every asset that was in that community, almost every single one was at risk. We lost 15 houses. But you know where the companies that were operating in that community went to defend first? Their oil assets, not the communities. So we're talking about public dollar and the use of fairness and the use of equity in this study. We need to consider the fact that these companies have not paid their fair share and have allowed for workers to pay the price, families to pay the price, rural municipalities, literally $253 million that could have went to people who are struggling right now today. And we can't even get a clear answer if they're going to pay their taxes. How is that equitable? How is that a future for Canadians? How? Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So, yeah, thank you. That ends our first round of the 6-minute questions. The next we have 2 5 minutes and then 2 2.5 minutes. And so first up I have, let me figure out my clock here, Mr. Bragdon, so I can get this right. I'll turn it over to you now for your 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to each of the witnesses that appeared here today, and I found it very informative what each of you had to say. Let me start off by saying, being from Atlantic Canada, from New Brunswick, I would like to say a thank you to those in the energy sector across the country and the workers who have worked in that sector, many of whom travel from Atlantic Canada out to the west to work and then come back, were able to help provide for their families. And also through transfer payments, we were able to have the kind of healthcare services maintained in our province, and schools continue to be built, and be able to have infrastructure because, in large part, due to those in our energy sectors. And I say thank you. Thank you for taking the time and coming here today and sharing your perspectives, and we do appreciate that. I have some rapid-fire questions, perhaps, for a few of you witnesses, and maybe I'll start with you, Mr. McTagg, just right off quick. Canada has amazing potential in the resource sector. We have some of the best environmental regulations in the world as it relates to energy extraction and resource development, and the world is wanting more Canadian energy. They are demanding more Canadian energy. What I'm hearing back home from folks in my region, Atlantic Canada, is why aren't we supplying the world with more Canadian energy when they're demanding it? Why can't we replace dictator oil with good democratic oil and energy resources when the world so desperately needs it, and help transition the world from perhaps coal in certain regions over to good Canadian liquefied natural gas? And I wonder if you could just speak to that and then follow up maybe by Ms. Joseph as quick as possible, because I have several questions. So, Mr. McTagg, over to you.
I think Canadians have for some time been able to take for granted cheap, affordable energy, but we have seen policies consistently from this parliament that have done significant damage in terms of being able to achieve not only the ability for us to get our product to international markets, but most importantly, to help Canadians. And you don't have to go much further than to look at the value of the Canadian dollar. Last time we saw $100 oil, we saw the Canadian dollar at par with the US greenback. We price everything based on that currency. And it's for that reason that Canadians continuously and consistently find themselves falling behind. But make no mistake, when the world is saying we need more energy, the alternative being Russia, the alternative being Iran, the alternative being Saudi Arabia, the alternative being, to some extent, Venezuela, it really behooves, I think, all leaders in this country to recognize the importance of our energy, which, while is not perfect, we don't do enough to celebrate the fact that we have a pretty significant clean menu of energy options. The last thing we should be doing is allowing other countries that are prepared to menace the security of the world by using oil and natural gas.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Matag. And I just want to go on from that particular aspect, that the kind of jobs that the energy sector provides, the type of wages it provides. And then when we talk about what we're looking at transitioning to, my understanding is that on a cold day in the winter in Alberta, that solar and wind would be able to carry about 1% of the base load of the energy needs of Albertans. As much as we want to move in that direction, and it's great that there's alternative energy coming online, the realities are that it's not ready to replace what we are relying upon for energy. So I think there's a great Canadian energy story to be told. And that also applies to us in the East. I want to talk to Ms. Johnson, just briefly ask this question. How important is the energy sector to our region's economy through employment and also helping prosper our regions that have been known as have-not regions and help transition our region to a part that could be actually contributing to the overall economy of Canada and growing and prospering? Ms. Johnson.
Thank you for your question. With respect to Newfoundland and Labrador, oil and gas accounts for about 25% of our GDP. In my opening remarks, I mentioned we represent about 460 members. About 15% of those come from Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, actually, because when Newfoundland and Labrador is doing well in the industry, Atlantic Canada is doing well as Alberta, Ontario when it comes to manufacturing jobs. And when I look out my office window, the very familiar Atlantic Towing or Orange vessels are there. That's a J.D. Irving company. That is hundreds of people from rural Newfoundland and Labrador that work on those vessels, high-paying jobs. They go back to their rural communities, volunteer, contribute to the tax base, and I can't understate how important this industry is.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. And I just think that's, and I know I've only got a couple of seconds here, but I want to thank each of you again. And I think there's a way forward because Canadian energy has tremendous potential. And it is needed, not only here within Canada, but around the world. And we need to be talking more about that, not less about it. So anyways, thank you.
And the 5 minutes goes by quickly. I apologize, but we're going to move over to Ms. Lapointe now for your 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Aldag. Thank you to all the witnesses for joining us here today. My questions will be directed to Ms. Marin Smith. It's a pleasure to see you here again at committee, Ms. Smith. When you last appeared during this committee study on emissions cap for the oil and gas sector, you said that Canada is well positioned to be a leader in clean energies. We have the metals, the minerals, and the opportunities to be a leader in batteries and other storage technologies, along with carbon capture and storage. We can use our clean energy to produce low-carbon metals, minerals, steel, cars, and other manufactured products. So based on the statement that you did make at committee, can you tell us your thoughts on what a fair and equitable transition for workers could look like when we're moving towards these cleaner energy options?
Yeah, thank you very much. So as I've said, there's huge potential for jobs across this country in both energy as well as in low carbon industries. So things like increasing our mining sector, increasing manufacturing of things like batteries, things that really fit with Canada, what Canada has, our critical metals and minerals, for example, and our clean electricity. So I want to stress one thing that, Canada is not in control of the energy transition. In fact, it's a global event that's happening. And what we're seeing right now with the crisis in the Ukraine and Russia is a short-term crisis around energy supply, primarily oil and gas. But it's also spurred the EU, who's been the leader in the energy transition, to reduce its dependence on imported fossil fuels. And I really think that foreshadows where the global economy is heading. And for this committee's discussion, we really need to be thinking about that. Where is the puck going? Because I live here in British Columbia, where we're building LNG Canada. I think that it will be coming online in 2025. It'll be producing natural gas, liquefied natural gas for export. That project has been years in the making. And I think if we look at what the IEA is projecting, they are projecting that we're already at peak oil demand right now, and that while gas will continue to increase, we reach peak gas around 2030, 2035. And so let's look at what are we going to be investing in now to set us up for those jobs of the future. Those energies are clean electricity, storage, whether it's batteries or other forms of storage, hydrogen. And here's an opportunity really to also take advantage of Canada's assets. Right now, blue hydrogen is what's being invested in a number of cases, which is using our natural gas. Once we have built out more of our clean electricity supplies, we can actually make that hydrogen out of water and clean electricity.
Yeah,
and that's going to be an export product.
When you talk about these new job opportunities, can you tell us, are the skills largely transferable?
Yes, many of the skills are largely transferable. We're looking for electricians, welders, construction workers, engineers. We are looking for people who are doing the same types of assessments, environmental assessments, the marketing. All of those skills are directly transferable.
Okay. So I think the energy transition is about opportunities and innovation. So I believe we're on the same page there. And being the MP for Sudbury, I'm obviously very excited about the potential for mining and critical minerals in the green energy sector. But we do need to recognize change is uncomfortable for many. And I think government has a role to play with steering the ship to a positive and constructive framework. So how can government policy help industry and labor see the opportunities and the innovation potential in clean energy? And what supports would you say we need to provide in order to do that? And
yeah, I see the work of this committee as very instrumental in supporting workers through that transition. I believe that one of the other panelists has identified some key steps: upskilling, connecting people with the jobs, and there's really a role for government to play to help with that, ensuring that we are actually have the university programs so that we are building the skills in both the technical colleges and the universities and matching those. And that hasn't been done in Canada yet.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
We need to actually get moving.
We're out of time there. Now we're going to go to Mr. Simard for his 2.5 minutes.
Merci.
Thank you again, John. Ms. Joseph, would you agree that the current economic situation is favourable for oil producers? What do you mean by conjoncture? Well, I mean with the conflict in Ukraine, with the economic recovery post-COVID, would you agree that the current juncture is very favourable for the oil sector? Response: I think that there are opportunities to move forward with an energy solution to these issues. Were I to tell you that Imperial had its best quarter in 30 years by raking in $1.2 billion in net profits, Cenovus tripled its dividends for its shareholders, Chevron quadrupled its profits since the start of the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. So is this a favourable juncture for the oil sector to be in? Well, yes, it is an improvement to when the price of oil was in the red. Well, yeah, there was assistance programs when oil dropped into the red zone, and they got support. Well, in the face of astronomical profits, I have trouble fathoming how you are living up to your obligations. Why isn't the oil sector ready to invest to reduce the oil carbon footprint? I don't understand the logic behind that failure to invest, unless you just want to go after better returns for shareholders and to pay that on the backs of Canadians. Response. Our companies do invest heavily to reduce their emissions, and over the past decade, we've reduced our emissions in the gas sector by 33% and in the oil sector by 14%. We're continuing. I understand you. But listen, we have to listen to science here, and I'm sure that you'll agree on this. Were I to tell you there are 400 academics that signed a letter indicating that carbon stockage for the oil and gas sector will not work, what do you think? Do you think the government is well advised to invest in a strategy that scientists have spoken out against as not being one that will actually work? It already works in Canada. We have systems that are working and up and running in Saskatchewan and elsewhere in the world, and that's why in Norway, the US, and everywhere where this issue is taken seriously, there's investments in carbon capture and storage, and we intend to do so and follow suit in Canada, more so, that is.
Now, Mr. Angus, over to you for your 2.5 minutes.
Thank you. This has been a fascinating study. It's certainly interesting with my good friends in the Conservative Party. I mean, they sort of tend to present this as some kind of climate change denial, a woke conspiracy to be mean to oil and gas workers. They denounce any or ridicule any efforts of new opportunities in alternate energy. But Mr. Silva, you work with energy workers. Gil McGowan from the Alberta Federation of Labour came here, and he said there's nothing theoretical about the transition. It's happening. Workers are expecting action. Is it reasonable that we work on this, and should we how do we work with workers so we actually listen to them and not the ideologues that the Conservatives keep bringing out?
It is absolutely reasonable. And I would recommend that the way that we start is by working with the communities. Rather than working with the workers just in isolation of their own, it has to be a community effort. We ran a community session in Hinton, Alberta, and we brought everybody into the discussion, right from the food bank to their religious people to the workers. It's a wholesome conversation. It shows them that this can be a just transition for their community, because that's what's important. When you have perhaps one local employer for many years that has provided many jobs, they've also provided the local economy. So you need to address that as a wholesome entire ecosystem to bring that transition forward.
I've lived through a lot of unjust transitions where by the time they showed up to do training, the plants were down and workers were left high and dry. But I've been in Edmonton with the IBEW where they are looking for alternatives from the workers you're dealing with. Are they resisting, or do they see that there's an opportunity, and do they want to be part of it? How do we make sure that we're ready so that we're transitioning into what's available rather than picking up the pieces after it's too late?
We ran an Abacus poll last year, and it asked fossil fuel workers right across Canada these kinds of questions. And overwhelmingly, they were supportive of moving into the renewable sectors, but their concerns were consistent. They were concerned that they were going to be left behind if they were not provided with opportunities for upskilling and reskilling within their communities.
Can you present, I know I'm running out of time, but could you get us that polling? Because I think that information is really, really fascinating on the recognition among the oil and gas energy workers and also what they would like in moving forward.
I'd be happy to. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will mention to all of the witnesses today that based on the conversation that we're having or following this, if there are additional thoughts you have, we invite additional submissions up to 10 pages. And so you are able to send that in at any point up until around May long weekend is when we're hoping to conclude the gathering of testimony for this study. So that is an open invitation for you to provide additional information that may come to mind or that you may have that you think would be of use to us. We're now going to go to Mr. McGuire for 5 minutes of questions.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just have a quick question of Ms. Joseph as well, you indicated that $20 billion was what the industry has paid in tax into the Canadian coffers this year. You also, we know that in the budget there was $1.5 billion worth of tax credits, which the industry has to put billions of dollars into investment in order to attract that. Even at that, there's still an $18.5 billion, I guess you could call it a surplus of investment from taxes paid by the industry to the government. Is that correct?
I'll just say that the $20 billion is the average paid to all orders of government. But
yep. Okay, just to make my point there, I guess the whole issue of Indigenous communities fully supporting natural resources, and you've just indicated that they're probably double the average investment in Indigenous from Indigenous peoples in the industry that there isn't any other industry. So many of the equity partners are employed by many of these Indigenous communities, are equity partners in their industries, I should say. They're employed by and they receive benefits from success in these local projects. So how would decreasing these natural resource developments affect the jobs of the First Nations?
Well, it would disproportionately impact First Nations jobs because the resource projects occur in those communities, in those areas. And, many Indigenous business owners, and, I think of the oil sands in particular, does about $2.4 billion annually in procurement with First Nation Indigenous owned businesses. So that's a disproportionate impact to those businesses that aren't going to be replaced.
Thanks. I just want to go to Mr. McTague, given my time. Thank you. I like your comments in your first opening about the timeliness versus the reality of the energy pricing. The high levels prices versus the balance of what the consumer can absorb. Given that opportunity to consider problems as a quick fix was one of your comments there, and that I really appreciate the comment that many sources aren't scalable, and I think you could look at the German example there. Ms. Marin or Ms. Smith, I should say, just made the comment that from the clean energy is a solution, I think was her last comment. But also a quote was, electric bills will be higher. The young families are having a struggle today with these high prices that we're seeing from inflation and other things in housing. And her last comment was, this is okay, but you'll pay now and save later. How is that going to happen, and is it reasonable given that they can't even buy a house, let alone a car now?
Well, there's the big issues of the day that you as politicians will have to deal with, but I can tell you from experience here in Ontario, a province that has a significant amount of clean energy already produced, the cost of which has been significant. The province of Ontario picking up $6.5 billion every year just to defray the cost of so-called green energy. By the way, green energy in my province that has not yielded those transitional jobs. Quite to the contrary, we've seen an actual exit of jobs in the energy sector. But that aside, I think what we're doing here is perhaps ignoring the bigger picture. Those opportunities exist if the subsidies continue to be there. We're dealing with your government, or a government, a parliament, that is sitting on some of the most record debts that I've seen in my time. I served as a member of parliament trying to slay those very large deficits that became actually unwieldy. I think we can make this transition that people keep talking about, but it's not going to happen because you decide, 2030 is the day, 2050 is the day. Many countries are having second thoughts about pursuing this direction, particularly because it's not only costly, it's now brought the world into a far more dangerous position of security, energy security in particular. And by the way, what happened in Europe, as far as Russia is concerned, long before Russia amassed troops on the border of Ukraine, we had a very serious problem with the energy supply. And a lot of that due to the fact that energy companies are being told oil and gas, don't invest. We don't want it anymore. The International Energy Agency last year said, we don't need any more oil. We should stop making fossil fuels altogether. Let's get rid of it. 2 weeks later, got their data wrong and saying, wait a minute, OPEC, please provide us a little bit more oil. We can't have policies based on wishful thinking. We have to be practical, pragmatic. And to be pragmatic today means you start to listen to the consumers out there who can't make ends meet.
Thank you. The industries of some previous witnesses have said that wind and solar manufacturing is dependent on foreign supply chains, yet we've got nuclear right here in Canada that is supported by a very stable domestic supply chain and benefits communities by supplying long-term local jobs. So can you just give me your thoughts on what it'll take whether it'll take all the energy sources we have to meet net zero. I believe you indicated that. So in our committee's recommendations to the government, should we prioritize energy sources that better support Canadian jobs and economy right here in Canada? You can elaborate on that?
I just think we need to be pragmatic. And I think the point is that we can achieve these things, but we're going to achieve them by understanding the limitations of the current technology that's there. We could all want a greater, more prosperous future, but we're not going to get there if we simply throw the baby out with the bathwater. In order to get to that next stage, in the next 10, 20, 50, 100, 150 years, I think we have to recognize that Canada and its technologies is the way ahead, and we can provide that to other countries as well. But we can't do it by simply saying, oil companies made a lot of money this year. Of course, they made money this year because they're being told not to reinvest. And of course, natural gas companies could provide an opportunity to to alleviate the situation in Europe and in Asia. But we consistently have said no to pipelines, no to infrastructure, while we focus uniquely on something that is not yet workable. I don't disagree with the need to do these things. I just think rushing, as we have been doing, not following what's happened in Europe is to put it very bluntly, short-sighted.
All right, and that's
I'd just like to finish by saying we're definitely on the same page.
Okay, we're moving over now to Mr. Sorbera. And Mr. Sorbera, you have 5 minutes on the clock.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome to all the witnesses, both in presence and virtual. Just starting off with more on the folks from the Canadian Electricity Association and Electricity Human Resources Canada. I heard some comments in terms about 80% electricity being produced in Canada now is non-emitting sources, that we're going to need a substantial investment in electricity infrastructure to get us to 100%. And I just wanted to ask on that, do you have any further clarity in terms of what the substantial investment would be and what a pertinent or appropriate realistic time frame would be?
Well, thank you very much for the question. It is an excellent question. The most recent study we did in terms of trying to identify what the infrastructure build would be for the electricity sector was before we had the full net zero 2050 targets. And at that time, the expectation was it would require about $1.7 trillion between now and 2050 for decarbonization and electrification. We're actually looking at updating those studies to get a better sense of the scope and scale of what the investment is going to look like, both in light of the 2050 net zero targets, but also the 2035 target that the government has with respect to a net zero grid. These targets are very aggressive. These targets are going to be challenging in some jurisdictions of the country, but the electricity sector is committed to work towards those targets. And as I said previously, the only way we're going to be able to achieve that is an all of the above approach.
Okay. Just going over, does Michelle, would you have any comment on that, please?
Looking at it from the jobs perspective, I think we need to also recognize a couple of really important factors, and that is that we have a rapidly retiring demographic here in Canada as well. And so as we start looking at, the just transition and those numbers, we need to recognize that we are going to need to replace those who are retiring. We don't have we have anecdotal evidence that COVID may be resulting in some of that being accelerated. We don't have the data yet, but that's what I'm hearing from the industry. So we're going to have some challenges involving ensuring that we have the people to keep the grid operating. So I think that's really important because there's two things. We need to ensure that we're attracting that next generation of talent from a resiliency and reliability perspective. And we haven't even touched on the fact that our current workforce does not here in Canada represent what the population of the country that we serve actually looks like.
Thank you, Michelle, because I do want to move on. My time is limited. To Clean Energy Canada, you referenced the comments on a well-designed clean energy strategy, and you also spoke to, with regards to battery manufacturing and some of the investments that have been made in the Canadian auto sector. And I'm the chair of the Liberal Auto Caucus. I've covered this sector for a number of years, both when I was in New York City and back in Toronto, so I'm very familiar with that. Any comments to the well-designed clean energy strategy, very quickly in 20 seconds or so I can ask one more question after that.
Yeah, clean industrial strategy. I was talking about this the country needs to get clear on where it's going. We need policy certainty on decarbonization. We need certainty on supports like tax credits and investments. And I think we need certainty that the business sector is asking for certainty, not this yin-yanging back and forth. There's been enough clarity about the cost of all clean energies coming down, battery storages. The solar project I mentioned in Alberta is at 4 cents a kilowatt hour. So there is the technologies in some cases is definitely ready for prime time. It's cheaper than fossil fuel infrastructure. There definitely is a need to build out infrastructure, to build out supports, to support worker transition and affordability that I don't think we focused on enough here today. Affordability so that all Canadians are able to, while their electricity bills will be more expensive, their overall energy costs will be cheaper, but we need to support families to get to that place.
Thank you. And just last question to Shannon over at CAP. I've argued that the world needs more of Canada's energy, both renewable and non-renewable. And if you look at our ESG rankings, the decarbonization of the oil sands, whether it's in situ or conventional, can you touch upon that? It's very important.
So I agree with you that all forms of energy are important, that Canada produces it with a focus on emissions reductions. Our oil sands producers have been decreasing their emissions 8% and 14% in the last 10 years, depending on the type of production. They want to go further, and they are investing right now in innovation to go further and have proposals to get to net zero.
And that's the end of our time for that round. We're going to go now to Mr. Melillo, who will have 5 minutes on the clock.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank all of our witnesses for joining us today for this important discussion. We've got a lot of very valuable feedback already so far. I'm sure it's going to continue to spark some fruitful discussions and maybe a little bit of debate as well, Mario, in this committee. But we get along quite well, and I think it's important that we're discussing this because I do think we all have the same end goal. It's just a matter of how we get there and support workers in the process. So I'd like to direct my questions first to Ms. Joseph. Previously, some witnesses in the committee have testified that the oil and gas sector will not be providing as many jobs as it currently is moving forward for Canadians, partly due to some of the cost-cutting measures that the sector is taking, that the producers are adopting. I'm just wondering if you agree with that and if you have any further comments on that statement.
I think the most important driver in terms of jobs is going to be global demand for energy, which is still increasing. Yes, our members are doing everything they can to reduce emissions, to drive efficiency, but as long as the world is demanding energy, there are going to be jobs and ongoing work to meet those needs in an innovative way.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And I'd like to pick up on where my colleague, Mr. McGuire, touched on as well in terms of global energy security. Obviously, that's a very important topic. It's one that's I think at the top of our minds right now, given what's going on in Eastern Europe with the Russian aggression in Ukraine. I'm just curious to get your thoughts further on Canada's ability to displace Russian oil and that of other dictatorships, other regimes, and provide a more ethical and more sustainable energy source.
So, our members worked with the Government of Canada, and we announced the potential of 300,000 barrels per day equivalent of additional output to help meet the needs. And a lot of that would flow through the United States, and by increasing overall supply, would support having more ethical supply online. I think we're very open to working together with governments on an approach that would allow us to do more and to leverage projects that may be kind of in the waitings, like Énergie Saguenay, and that are in construction, like LNG Canada, to see how can we do more.
Would you have any more specific recommendations, even in terms of legislation or the like, in terms of what our committee could propose to support those efforts?
Well, I would just say from a general perspective, policies that create kind of regulatory certainty and efficiency that cut down on the time to get permitting done and construction addressed, things that provide certainty for investors about the direction we want to go in and the role we want to play, and that would allow investors to invest with confidence. Those types of policies would be important, and those types of signals about what the government wants our energy to do in the world would be important.
Okay, thank you very much. And sorry, I'm jumping around on a few different topics here, but there's a lot I want to get in a short period of time. We've heard as well from some of the witnesses in committee, or at least seemingly, we have some witnesses that seem to take the approach that you're either on the side of the environment or you're on the side of Canadian jobs, and there's no in between. I would happen to disagree with that. I think that there's certainly a lot of benefit to supporting Canadian jobs and Canadian industry, especially from the environmental side. I think when we talk about some of the energy from regimes like Russia and others, there's also further than the global security standpoint, I think there's an environmental conversation we need to have as well. And I know firsthand from some of the opportunities I've had to do some tours, particularly in northern Alberta, about some of the great work that our energy sector is doing to be more efficient and to be greener. And I'm wondering if you can comment on some of those efforts as well.
So our members have many initiatives, including the Canadian Oil Sands Innovations Alliance, including an initiative called CRIN. Our conventional producers are working together in a number of technology initiatives. I think the thing we're all concerned about is emissions, and we believe that we can decouple environmental impacts and emissions growth from the growth in our production, and we are focused on that, and we'll continue to work towards that.
Thank you.
Perfect. That's the end of the time for that one. Now we're going to go to Mr. Shahal for his 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for joining us today. I'll start with Mr. Bradley with Electricity Canada. You spoke about that Canada would need to increase clean electricity by 2 or 3 times what we produce by 2050. And you talked about the need for planning and infrastructure. Can you talk a little further of what type of planning and infrastructure is required to, number one, to produce that clean electricity, but also transmit it across the country?
Yes, thank you. So yes, there are challenges in all aspects of this. Certainly, with respect to generation, the reality is it is more challenging today than it was 10 years ago to build infrastructure. The challenges of siting, the challenges of seeking approvals, the complexity of this work has simply increased. That's just a reality that we need to deal with, and it's something that everybody in the sector is addressing. So we are going to require, yes, 2 to 3 times more clean electricity. It will be a combination of large-scale grid generation and small-scale distributed energy resources and community-level resources. Much of the infrastructure, though, will also need to be built out as well from a transmission standpoint. The challenge with respect to transmission is that we do not have an effective subnational coordination function for the planning and construction of transmission at a regional basis. These are done at a provincial basis only. We recently had some research that we commissioned that looked at other jurisdictions that have been more successful at building transmission infrastructure, and some lessons learned that we might be able to apply in Canada, and we'll provide that to the community.
Are you referring to subnational transmission as the interties between provinces?
Yes, yeah. When we're talking about interties within regions between provinces, because the regulation right now of electricity is at a provincial level, it is challenging to undertake projects that are regional in nature. And so those would be transmission projects.
Thank you. Ms. Joseph, you talked about, and other my colleagues have talked about, the $20 billion that goes to all levels of government. Do you have a breakdown of which provinces and then municipalities receive that funding? So, I mean, I guess I'm from the city of Calgary. What would a city like mine, what would the impact be from jobs, but also on to our operational revenues at a municipal level, but then also smaller communities, for instance, of maybe Medicine Hat or smaller cities such as Red Deer. And I'm wondering if the work you've done in that analysis has a further breakdown to provinces and smaller municipalities as well.
I'll have to look into that further because that number includes royalties collected by BC, Alberta, Newfoundland. It includes corporate tax revenues, municipal tax revenues. And so it would be difficult to break those down because, for example, a city like Calgary might get infrastructure money through the province, which gets royalties. But we can look at what additional information to provide. What I can say in terms of the jobs piece is, for example, in a province like Alberta, I think there are over 15,000 businesses in our supply chain that are just in Alberta, and those are spread across the whole province in terms of jobs and businesses and communities. And so it's the industry has lots of impacts, not just on big cities like Calgary, where you'd have our headquarters, but also in the smaller communities where some of those suppliers are located.
I guess if we're doing a study on the just transition, we need to understand where the impacts are going to be. I'm glad you raised that, but I think the statistics are needed on this committee to have a better understanding of which communities, small and large across the country, coast to coast to coast, are going to be impacted by the transition. Mr. Mateague, in your comments, you talked about affordability. And you talked about electricity, increasing cost, oil and gas, diesel. As we transition, how do we deal with affordability once we understand that we must go through this transition? What recommendations do you specifically have to on affordability for Canadians?
And just so you know, we're at the end of the 5 minutes. So I'll give you just a minute, or well,
5 seconds maybe.
Yeah, 5 seconds for a very brief response, please.
Chair, thank you, and thank you for the question. Go easy. Go in concert with what technology is available, and do so ensuring that you do no harm to Canadians, their prosperity, and their ability to make ends meet.
Thank you. A balanced approach, and I think that's what our government's been doing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go to Mr. Simard and then Mr. Angus for 2.5 minutes each. Because it's gone so well today with no bells and anything else, I do have a 5-minute slot at the end for the Conservatives and a 5-minute slot for the Liberals. I have Mr. McLean and Ms. DeBruce for those two. If you don't want it, you'll have 5 minutes to chat with your colleagues and figure out if you're taking it or not. So with that, Mr. Simard, you have...
Merci.
Give me a second.
Merci.
Well, thank you very much, John. Ms. Joseph, in response to a question from my colleague Eric, you raised my eyebrows because you said GNL Saguenay had shuttered up its doors. Is that correct? Is that what you were intimating? Well, I know that there was a decision handed down regarding that project, but there is an interest in doing so. But there's an institution in Quebec, the BAP, which indicates that liquefied gas is not a transition energy. Perhaps you have your own studies on this, but for the Quebec public hearing consultation body, gas is not a transition energy, and it's written in black and white in its findings that the drawbacks are, in fact, exceed the advantages from an environmental standpoint. So why do you believe that GNL is a transition energy? Are there any studies to back that up? There are a number of studies indicating that liquefied natural gas is a substantial form of energy that can reduce greenhouse gas emissions in many countries of the world that rely on coal. Well, there are some studies that say the opposite, says Mr. Simard, that it is not an alternative energy source, that it, in fact, is pushing down the price of coal. Are there any studies from other stakeholders and those with direct ties to the oil and gas sector? Response. Well, I can get back to you on that. Thank you. In that case, I'll let Mike take the floor with my remaining few seconds.
Merci, Monsieur Simard. Of Mr. McTagg, earlier you mentioned you warned of going too quickly because it's fashionable. My sense is we need to move quickly because climate scientists tell us this is required for our survival as a species. However, this made more sense to me when I looked up a letter you wrote on your blog saying that the latest IPCC report is anti-fossil fuel alarmism, with your concern of rhetoric and green bureaucracy and boondoggle programs. My question specifically is, in the most recent budget, the current government allocated $7.1 billion between now and 2030 on carbon capture and storage. We heard from Iron and Earth, part of their 4-point plan is to ensure we have workers getting upskilled. They've suggested $10 billion in order to direct funds to workers on their training. Would you not then support reallocating away from carbon capture and towards upskilling of workers?
And I'll just say that we'll have to have a quick answer on this one as well because we're at the end of the 2.5 minutes. Again, sorry, man, that we still need to get to Mr. Angus. Yeah, exactly.
Mr. Mike, thank you for that. Look, I think we have to recognize that that so-called transition for workers was attempted here in Ontario. It didn't work out so well. Many of those workers still are looking for work and have gone back to traditional industries. And we have to recognize that the amount of money that's being committed for subsidies better have an end, because if you need subsidies to encourage people to buy something, subsidies for them to build something, subsidies for them to maintain something, sooner or later, something is going to give. And I can tell you $2 a litre across Canada today, there aren't many people who are not prepared to accept that we've gone down, I think, a little too quickly on this idea that we can suddenly wish away fossil fuels and at the same time provide people a standard of living that they've come to expect. We're not perfect, but we're better than most countries. And on that context, I think you have to be very careful in how quickly you tread, because I think at this point, burdening people with the cost of heating, the cost of electricity, the cost of natural gas, and other important factors in our society aren't just hurting Canadians. You're hurting the world and depriving it of what it desperately needs and which Canada can produce. I think we all win in that respect, but understand that the ability to make this transition can't be done because some people just simply say, hey, that's the way we have to go. As for the science, I'm convinced. I'm up with people like Stephen Koonin in his book Unsettled, and there are many others who will say that. There's a lot of debate and discussion there. I'm willing to listen to it, but I'm also prepared to say we can't throw out the baby with the bathwater. We have to stand up for Canadians and ensure that Canadians are doing the right thing, the most responsible thing, without hurting them.
Okay, and with that, we need to go over to Mr. Angus for his 2.5 minutes.
Well, thank you. I want to end with Mr. McTigg, who's my cousin, so I just want to put that on the table.
Okay.
Yeah. I sort of wonder, though, you described the IPCC as extremists, correct?
I describe their conclusions when we take one versus the several that may be out there, that we tend to look at the most extreme and use that as a basis for public policy.
Well, okay, but you did. No, you called them groups like the IPCC. So that's the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change.
I know
that was created.
Mr. Angus,
I know
yes.
That was created by the World Meteorological Organization and the United Nations, which you had described the report as a anti-fossil fuel alarmism. I bring that up because I actually wonder why you're here, Mr. McTigg. I don't see any expertise in just transition, but in climate change denial, you can't be beat. I have you on Twitter saying many Canadians are clinging to the false narrative of a climate emergency. Nothing to see here, Canadians. Just the bitter harvest of our climate alarmist appeasement. Appeasement strikes me as amazing. Then you go on to say from another blog, and you kind of alluded to it here, that the science of climate change is anything but settled, and we are not, nor should we anticipate a crisis.
Just a second, Mr. Angus. I've stopped the clock. Point of order you've called.
I just think it's quite uncalled for him to,
not at all,
for my honourable colleague to attack one of the witnesses on the panel in a personal way. I just don't think there's any place for that. Look, we all come at this from different perspectives.
Is this a debate?
No, it's
Come
not
on.
a debate.
Anyway, it's
We've
point
heard
of
the
order.
point.
I just
And
think-
as I've said before, I tend to give a fair bit of latitude to our members, but we will also afford the witnesses an opportunity to respond.
Okay.
And there's a minute and 13 seconds left on this round, so I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Angus, and I'll start
Well,
the clock.
thank you. I was actually not surprised that the Conservatives intervened because their whole position here has been to deny climate science, and so they've got a guy whose Twitter feed is full of ridiculing the crisis, calling it woke capitalism. The fact that he's claiming that there is no science on this is ridiculous. I mean, it's something that'll go well with the Conservatives. So I was actually trying to figure out where Mr. McTeague gets his science from, and he says that people are waking up. He says, Gilets jaunes in France. The Yellow Vesters. So I kind of remembered them, and so I looked them up. Okay, CNN says the Yellow Vesters are fanning the flames of anti-Semitism in France. ABC, the Yellow Vesters are dogged with intolerance and extremism. France 24, violence is seen as legitimate by the Yellow Vesters. So I want it on the record that the person that they brought here to represent their interests on affordability says the people that we need to be learning from are the extremists in France who believe that violence is okay, that science is ridiculous, and that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is a, quote, group of extremists. Enough said. Thanks. I don't need any more time.
Okay.
No, you don't. You do not. You do need some time, Mr. Angus, because of course that's your style. And although I'm related to you, I consider you a friend. I understand that your idea here is...
I love you, Dan. I just don't want to put up with climate change denial and be told it's legitimate. I'll call my mother on you. I'll call my mother on you, Dan.
One at a time. Charlie, you're out of time. I will just...
That's hardly fair.
No, Mr. McTeague, I'll give you like 10 seconds. I think we'll give you the courtesy of a brief comment if you'd like, and then I do need to get through, get to Mr. McLean and Mr. Bruson for their last 10 minutes.
Mr. Angus knows I'm a realist. That's why we worked together in the past. He wants to call this denialist. That's a terrible slur. I'm surprised he's using it, but then that's what you expect from someone who's taking an extreme view on a public policy that's hurting his constituents. So when they're complaining about $2 a liter and $2.50 in Timmins, I'll remind his constituents over the next couple of days that his member is too busy looking at Twitter feeds rather than getting up and standing up for the people he's supposed to represent.
Okay. I'm going to go to Mr. McLean now for a 5-minute final round, and then we'll go to Mr. Bruson, and that
Thank
will
you,
wrap
Mr.
up
Chair,
our
and
panel.
back to some real questions and some real reality here. And I'll challenge, of course, some facts put on the table by my Green colleague who talked about an existential crisis of our whole species, which I don't think that's ever in writing anywhere from any body that our species is at risk. But if you want to put that on the table, I'd appreciate it, Mr. Morris. Thank you. We're here to decarbonize and look at what we need to do here.
Okay,
Well, since we're on the conversation of denial, we'll give him the latest statement by UN Secretary General Guterres. It's talking about the mass extinction of animals. I know they don't want to hear that, but if he's saying it's not true, we'll put it on the...
I've stopped the clock, Mr. McLean. You have it's back to you for 4.5 minutes.
Well, thank you very much. I'm going to ask some questions of Ms. Johnson here. Ms. Johnson, thank you for coming here today. Can you tell me about the jobs that are involved in the offshore oil production in Newfoundland? Please, can you tell me how many jobs are there in production and how many are there in exploration?
For every exploration well, it creates about 400 jobs in Newfoundland and Labrador. And then if a discovery is found, that is thousands of jobs through the capital development phase and thousands through the operations phase. So there are about 22,000 people in the province directly and indirectly employed in the sector. And that is projected to increase to over 50,000 jobs over the next decade. As you know, somebody mentioned earlier, Bay du Nord was recently approved for environmental assessment, so that has the potential for thousands of jobs. And one thing I will note about that project, it is one of the lowest carbon intensity projects in Canada.
Thank you. We've heard that, Ms. Johnson. What I'd like to know about is about the labor. So 50,000 jobs, what percentage of Newfoundland's working population is that?
Well, the potential is to get to 50,000. Currently, it's over 21,000. I'd have to verify the number, but I think it's about a little over 200,000 working population. So
the
definitely
largest,
over 10.
yeah, the
between 10
largest,
to
the largest
15%.
contributor to your economy, would you say? So
For sure.
And those are very. Tell me about the technicality of those jobs, if you could, please, and how much training goes into the offshore, if you will.
Very highly specialized training to get offshore. There's a lot of training that goes into the basic survival training course. There's continuous ongoing training. Safety and environment is of utmost paramount. So a lot of engineers, years and years of training, continuous training, but also a lot of technical jobs and right on down through the supply chain.
Thank you very much. Something not easily transitioned to filling up electric conduits, if you will. May I just move to Mr. McTeague? Mr. McTeague, I'll ask you a question about some facts that were put on the table here. Ms. Smith actually said $126,000 are going to be lost in the energy transition, and cleaner energy will result in lower energy bills. Can you tell me how more expensive energy results in lower energy bills, please?
Well, it doesn't. And of course, we have to recognize that when we're comparing strictly some renewables, such as solar or in this case, wind, that they are not effective in terms, unless they are backed up, usually by natural gas, or I think, as Ms. Smith has pointed out, by other electrical means. In this case, of course, in my province, that would mean nuclear. The issue, I think, for many of us, though, however, is that we are seeing a circumstance where the reality of high-cost renewables are making and skewing to the upside, the cost for ratepayers, not just for the cost of hydro in and of itself, but also—
Mr. McTeague, I have to move here quickly if you can, please. So you talk, Ms. Smith also talked about electrical vehicles were cheaper overall. Can you tell me if that's supportable by the analysis you've seen?
No, not at all. And internal combustion engines, the most efficient ones, 2021, 2022, mated with hybrids are probably half the price.
Thank you. And it bears out in the price that these still require significant government subsidies, both at the employment level and at the purchase level. Ms. Smith, I'll ask you one final question. You talked, I agree with you, there is heat loss in internal combustion engines. Can you tell me what the phase transition is like from electricity to heat?
Well, I want to go back to your question about electricity bills.
I asked you a specific, Ms. Smith, I asked you a question about the power loss and phase transition from electricity to heat.
Well, I can tell you that in fossil fuel electricity production or in vehicles, as you're well aware, there's a significant amount more energy is lost through heat than is put into the work. And that if you're talking about that phase transition, it's far more efficient.
I'm talking about the phase transition when you switch from one power source, a current power source, if you will, to a heat power source. So electricity requires a phase transition, which means you need twice as much power from electricity to heat the same room. Are you aware of that?
What I'm well aware of is that your energy bills will go down, and this is proven out by extensive modeling by agencies such as the International Energy Agency, as well as modeling done here in Canada by Climate Choices and by ourselves. And so it's, I'll send Dan a copy of the paper we produced about vehicles and how your energy costs, your overall cost of running a vehicle will be lower. Interestingly, I think people need to look at the cost of electric vehicles now today in 2022 and how they have dropped and how this is now more affordable. It wasn't this way even 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Renewable energy.
The batteries have just gone up by thousands of dollars.
We're out of time. In fact, we're just slightly over time on the 5 minutes. And so now I'm going to jump to Ms. DeBruce and to finish our last 5 minutes here.
Great. Thank you. Been finding all of these exchanges fascinating. Would love to go to the Angus McTeague, family dinners would be really fascinating. Thank you. I was looking, just because there's been a whole lot of conversation about the price of gas, and I was looking at the global petrol prices and looking at the graphs. And what's fascinating is they're all kind of the same when you look at them. They kind of just shoot up over the past few months across the world. So it's kind of a fascinating thing. I'll just point out that even in the UK, they're looking at over $2 per litre right now. So it seems to be a bit of a worldwide phenomenon from what my quick little bit of research is showing. Ms. Smith, before I go further, you were going to answer a question, or you wanted to say something a few minutes ago, and then it seemed like you'd been cut off. So I just wanted to give you a minute if you wanted to kind of finish that thought.
Sure. I think I just want it to be really clear to the members here that I did say that electricity bills will go up because you'll be using more electricity in a lower carbon world as we move to 2030. But your overall energy costs, and that's what matters to the pocketbook, will go down. And yes, the costs of these new technologies have dropped significantly over the last decade, for some of them as much as 90%, such as solar. But we do, as a nation, need to ensure that that this is an equitable energy transition, and that we support lower income Canadians with certain measures so that they can actually come into these new technologies.
Okay. And just because I know that there's been conversation about the types of things we're talking about, I believe you had mentioned that some of the jobs that would be created going forward are in the area of building retrofits, buildings being large source of emissions. When we're looking at that, retrofits to a person's home, building, workplaces, that would reduce energy costs, would it not?
Yes, that's precisely it. We need to be more efficient with our entire economy. So it's building so that families will have better homes and lower energy costs. It's also industry as well, greater efficiency in our industries. And I think we're seeing that. So I guess I just want to say again that this lower carbon, decarbonized world, cleaner energy and low carbon products is where the world is going. And Canada has huge opportunities for jobs. I've outlined many in batteries, in clean electricity, and in producing low carbon products. We need to ensure that the workers are transitioned into these new roles. They're good paying jobs. We've heard a lot about that from some of our colleagues here. And as we go through this transition, we need to support all Canadians on the way. But it ultimately, and we'll look at the science of burning gas versus electricity, it's a far more efficient approach to an economy and to household expenses.
Okay, thank you. I only have a couple more minutes left, but Ms. De Silva, it was really fascinating when you were talking about bringing in the whole community when we're looking at it, because there's been a lot of conversation about individuals. Perhaps can you go a little bit further about what does a community approach look like when we're talking about building towards a new community and new opportunities?
Absolutely. It's so important to bring the entire community in, because you need to have the voices of everybody. It's not going to be a singular person that is transitioning. This energy transition is going to bring everybody along. It is going to be happening. And if I can just make one point, in my organization, we work with a lot of remote and Indigenous communities. And I've heard today, some people say Canada has had cheap, affordable energy. Perhaps if you've been living in metropolitan areas, but I speak with people that live on reserves and they pay $500 to $700 a month for electricity. It's mad how much they pay. So that cannot be considered cheap, affordable energy when a quarter of your pay is just going towards electricity. It's things like this why it's necessary to bring the entire community along, because it does affect everybody. If you're putting up a solar farm or wind turbines, or you're having a geothermal plant, or you're doing heat pumps or retrofits are so important, because especially on remote communities, they live in insufficient housing. So these houses already need more energy to be heating themselves up, or cooling down, or just to be running. So it is a community problem. And perhaps we don't see that because we don't live in these kind of communities, but it is a community problem.
Thank you.
With that, folks, we're out of time. I really would like to thank all of the witnesses for being here with us today. Your testimony has been very helpful. Even with some of the exciting exchanges, I think we have some really good information, and I do appreciate the information that you provided that will help inform our report. that we're hoping to get done before the end of the session. I'm hoping the members will indulge me. We have just the resources available to us for like 5 minutes, and I have 3 really quick things I'd like to try to address. 5 minutes? And so we can let the witnesses go now with a huge thank you for your support. The first item I wanted to share with the committee members, and this, Charlie, is to your point, we actually have Canadian Labour Congress scheduled to appear on May 16th, so they are on the list. The second thing is we had a few people had requested about perhaps attending the Prospecting Developers Association of Canada's Mineral Exploration and Mining Convention. And today is the deadline for us to approve anyone attending it. And it has to be submitted by tomorrow and then approved at liaison by Friday. And so we haven't had a chance to canvass all of the committee members. We've developed a budget for the full committee to go, and that was circulated to people during question period today. You should have had a chance to look at it. And I'm just wondering if there is a request, or if I get somebody to move this, and then we'll vote on putting it forward. We will then canvass people, and we can always reduce it down. It's easier to do that as opposed to do a smaller budget and approve it up. Yes, Charlie.
Monday night is Northern Ontario night at Steam Whistle Brewery. It is the best party on the planet. So if we're going, we have to go on the Monday, and you have to get us tickets because they're very hard to get.
Okay, and do I take that as a motion to approve the? Okay, so any discussion on this one? Otherwise, can I, Larry?
Just for clarity, then you're looking at putting in a larger number, and we'll determine later.
Yeah, and sure. We'll send a note off this week to see who would actually be involved. And when I go to liaison on Friday, if we have a revised number, I can downscale it. But for today, I'd say let's put in for the full amount that was circulated.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I just have one little thing.
Sure.
Yeah. I wasn't aware that you're saying that the Canadian Labour Congress is coming on May the 16th?
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. That's a week today.
Yeah.
Next week, next Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was also wondering, I'm very much in favor of that. Just wondered whether we could have as peer as well the Ontario Power Corporation.
Okay, you know what, let's finish off this other item on the budget first.
Yeah,
so
sorry.
if we could call the question, all in favor of submitting this budget? Anyone opposed? Carried. On other witnesses, I'll just say that I am meeting now with our clerk and analysts to go through the rest of the witnesses we have, who's in, who's out. And so I don't know, did you catch who Larry had just suggested? I'll catch you before you go, Larry. And
yeah, just for the record, it was the Ontario Power Corporation.
Okay, and we'll see if I can get that list circulated so everybody knows the state of the the rest of the study and the witnesses. The last thing I'd wanted to get to, and this is an item that has been okay.
Even I was wrong there. It's Ontario Power Group. Generation. Ontario Power Generation.
Okay. Okay.
Just to get the right.
The last item I had, and this is outstanding from quite a while ago, it had also been circulated. We had a subcommittee on agenda and procedures of the Standing Committee on Natural Resources that was we met on March 28th, and there were 6 items. I don't know if people have looked at that recently, but there's a whole bunch of items have already passed, but probably the one that is most pressing is pulling forward the study that we had on low carbon and renewable fuels industry in Canada. And in order for us to look at that, I need to get this subcommittee report adopted. And I'm just wondering if somebody is willing to move that, if there's any discussion. Charlie? Move it? Okay. Is there any discussion? And is everybody willing to vote on that? It's just the adoption of the report. The committee. Okay, so all in favor? Anyone opposed? That's adjourned. Okay, and that's carried. So, and with that, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you on Wednesday.